if you're not feeling right, if there's something that just seems off to you, investigate that. There's something that you can do. Do you need to change your diet? Do you need to change the way you move your body? Do you need to change the environment you're in? You don't have to stay stuck. And I think just watching myself go through that transition from being really young, yet feeling terrible, to getting older when you think, we always hear as we age that we get these maladies and we feel worse, but it was actually the opposite for me. As I've gotten older, I continue to feel better and better.
Welcome to another episode of Laugh Out Loud podcast, where we talk about truths that shall set you free and make you laugh. Today, my guest is Jenna Miller. Jenna is a yoga teacher and a holistic nutritionist specializing in gut health and mental well-being. With over a decade as a wellness professional, her philosophy centers around nourishing the body-mind through food and practices that calm the nervous system. Jenna's background includes certifications in yoga therapy, herbalism, nutrition therapy, meditation, Reiki, and other forms of body work. She has a wealth of knowledge, information, and experience to share with us, and I hope you get a lot of insight into how to harmonize your body-mind experience and understand more about your nervous system as well. Jenna Miller.
Here welcome. I am. We're doing it.
We're doing it. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Since you've been on this path in wellness and yoga, nutrition, it's been a journey, I'm sure. And I would love to go back into the beginning of your journey and what led you to yoga, just briefly, what led you there, and what led you to do it full time? You do this full time, right? Which is a big deal. So we're talking about almost 2 decades. You're growing younger. You see the magic of yoga.
Absolutely.
We are actually 70 already. So that's the magic.
The yoga works.
All right. If you could tell us a little bit of what led you to even begin your yoga practice, and from there, what brought you here so far?
Sure. I don't have any kind of background, or I didn't have any kind of background in yoga. I didn't grow up with it. I grew up in the Midwest where I didn't know what yoga was, I think, until I was in college. And I took a class, but it didn't really resonate with me. When I moved out to California, I don't remember how I started taking my first few classes. But I just remember in those first few classes, something dawned on me where I just knew I need to do this. And I think it was just a phase in my life where I had taken some big risks. I had moved across the country by myself, and that paid off. And I was feeling confident and ready to explore something else. And I just had this idea that I should teach yoga. And I don't think my mind even saw down the road what I wanted it to look like. I just knew, it was just a knowing, I have to do this. And I remember being a couple of weeks into my teacher training, and the first time I had to stand up in front of the room and say, I was supposed to teach a pose. I think I was going from mountain pose standing up to forward fold, a very simple transition. And I panicked because all of a sudden in that moment, standing in front of this room of 50 people, 50 other students, I realized, oh, this is public speaking. And I don't do public speaking. I'm terrified of it. And I got tunnel vision and the words wouldn't come out of my mouth. And my instructor's like, okay, sit down. You're done now. But I remember going home after that and thinking, okay, I'm in too deep now. I can't go back. So I have to figure out how to get through this. And I figured it out and it was fine. And I practiced a lot, but I really loved it as soon as I got into it. I was always hungry to learn more.
At what point did you decide to do it full time? And what would you say to those thinking about it or desiring it and perhaps not seeing how that could be possible? What goes into it, into your career, so you manage to do it full time?
That's such a good question. I will say, I think I came into it at the right time, the right place, where taking it full time just happened organically. I did early on manage yoga studios and teach at the same time. So that was a really good way to, ease into it and still feel like I had something stable and something responsible going on in managing, but then I still got to teach a lot. Um, of course, that landscape has changed so much now. And I would say to be a full-time teacher now, I would highly encourage people just to take ownership of what they do, especially if you want to be full-time. I feel like there was a phase where I really burnt myself out trying to teach all the classes and hit all the locations. I think I was teaching 16 or 17 classes a week, which is a lot. And now I've gotten away from that and I've found more specifically what I like to do, the people I like to work with, the types of clients I like, and just some places that let me be a little more creative. I think, when you're starting out, it's nice to have a foundation and have kind of a structure of what is required of you or required of your class. But there comes a point when you want to spread your wings and it can feel too confining. So, yeah, I think for those people that want something more full time, to really think about what is exciting to them and who they want to work with and how they can really take ownership and build those connections with not just with students, but maybe it's a certain venue or a certain type of student or an organization, and to really make it their own. Because I think in order to make a full-time income, to make it really feel like a fulfilling career, it's got to feed you a little bit.
Sounds like it is going to be unique. There's a unique path that can unfold depending on your skills, your choices, what fulfills you. So eventually you included nutrition into your wellness toolbox, your wellness toolbox. What led you there from your yoga teaching into nutrition? How that came about?
Sure. I always was interested in, we'll call them alternative therapies. When I was younger, instead of going to the doctor, I went to a naturopath and took herbs and things like that. So that was always part of my world from about my college years on. And I think that influenced me as much as yoga did. And really growing up, especially through my teens and 20s, not feeling great, experiencing a lot of depression, low energy, just never really feeling good. And then coming into yoga, where I got a little more in touch with my body and becoming more aware of how I feel and how different things make me feel. And I really began noticing, if I eat this way, I don't feel great. If I change my diet a little bit, I kind of feel better. And I think that encouraged me to follow through on a lot of information that I learned when I was younger, but I just wasn't implementing. And really cutting out added sugar was major. It totally changed my mental health. It changed my energy levels. I never got sick anymore. Like all kinds of these great things came out of taking sugar out of my diet, which, was a little bit of a challenge at the time. I think there's a lot more conversation around that topic now, but at the time it was very uncommon, and especially the age that I was, and things like drinking socially was a big deal. And so some really big shifts that I had to make, and I learned so much from that. And I think ever since then, it has just always been important to me to help people understand that if you're not feeling right, if there's something that just seems off to you, investigate that. There's something that you can do. Do you need to change your diet? Do you need to change the way you move your body? Do you need to change the environment you're in? You don't have to stay stuck. And yeah, I think just watching myself go through that transition from being really young, yet feeling terrible, to getting older when you think, we always hear as we age that we get these maladies and we feel worse, but it was actually the opposite for me. As I've gotten older, I continue to feel better and better. Blame the yoga, blame the nutrition. It's all important.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel the same way. You touched a point that I think it's a key point, which is awareness and really observing how you feel, right? Because it takes that awareness to really decide what are the next steps, right? And that we can feel good, that we can feel balanced and with balanced level of energy, and sugar is a major problem that we are talking more about it, but it's still everywhere in everything, and in alcohol as well. So those are choices that again requires that awareness to really notice how that makes you feel, right? And I think that yoga is, and it was for me, a way of developing that awareness, right? It begins at, oh, I'm now aware of my body. Now I'm aware of my breath. Now I'm aware of the way I feel, because just that is a major step, because we can go without observing ourselves.
And we're so encouraged to numb out, whether it's with food or alcohol, but also with, social media, being on our phones or being overly busy. There's so many ways that that's just part of our culture, and we accept that as normal behavior, but it's not always the thing that it doesn't lead us to our best. It can be really draining.
Great point. There are ever more distractions, right? Yeah. So just turning that attention within and cutting out those distractions, it's already a great way of becoming more aware of how you feel. And along your path, what transformations have you experienced so far? We see that yoga consistently, it transforms you. It's a constant transformation. And what would you say that were meaningful key transformations that you experienced?
Uh, Becoming a yoga teacher, I noticed, I think one of my favorite transformations is when I was younger. If you asked me what type of job I had in mind for myself for the future, I just wanted something where I didn't have to talk to people and I could just be behind a computer all day and have no human interaction. That would be ideal. I just would tell you that I didn't like people. And becoming a yoga teacher and gaining the skill that I could share with people, that I could see how it impacted them, I could watch them change in the course of an hour, was really powerful for me, because suddenly I had this thing to give and this thing mattered and people needed it. And it took me from, I don't like people, to, wait, I actually really do love connecting with people. I mean, I'm an introvert to the core, 100%. But even now in working with my clients, I'm doing a lot of one-on-one work. And I really enjoy getting to dig into a person's story and figure out what's motivating them or what they're stuck on, and being able to watch them grow and change. So it's a good transformation for me, but it's fun for me to watch people transform as well.
Beautiful. And so you mentioned some of about sugar, about your changes, about your self-investigation into a more optimal state. You now have studied yoga therapy and holistic nutrition, right? So how would you describe a holistic approach versus our typical way
Our
of.
white lab coat way. The
Yeah.
more allopathic, like the more traditional Western way, which, there's so much good to come out of that. So I don't want to take away from that. But it's not really set up to be lifestyle medicine. It's there for emergencies. And of course, we need that. But I think the difference is really in learning how to take care of yourself. And we're just not taught that. And learning about, like you said, how do we build that skill of interoception where we're sensing from the inside of the body how things make us feel? Because that skill is what helps us. Yeah, it helps us with our yoga practice because we can kind of get a sense of how the body needs to adjust in a yoga pose. Um, it gives us that skill of, or that ability to sense how food impacts the way we feel. I can't tell you how many times I've talked to someone that says, "Oh, I know I shouldn't eat this, but I feel fine when I eat it." But if we dig a little bit deeper, they realize, "Oh, actually, when I eat that ice cream, my stomach does kind of hurt." And so there's always a journey around exploring that and building that connection and figuring out how you want to use that information. But even, in emotional work, that ability to be able to sense on the inside how you're feeling is going to give you a lot of information so that you can assess, oh, I've got this big emotion arising. How do I want to respond to it before you actually explode or have some big reaction? Building that inner awareness is really important. Learning to tune in and to be your own doctor, to be your own guide. And yes, get educated, get support where you need it, but ultimately you're in charge of your well-being and you've got to be an advocate for yourself.
Including the whole experience of the individual versus just that isolated episode of a stomach ache, but including the emotions. I think you pointed the those big emotions and the emotional aspect of our experience that is influencing everything. It is part of everything, and how the body will respond to those emotions, right? So you work with mind body, right, as one thing, as one unit. There is no mind separate from the body or the body separate
It's
from the
all
mind.
connected.
Yes. There's one thing, mind body, there. I see it's being used as one word
Mm-hmm.
together, and we are evolving. Um, so, what would you say that have you found along your work with your clients and your personal journey about this mind body connection that we tend to miss and that we could pay more attention to?
Mm, that's a really great question. I think so often, just like you mentioned, even now we do still tend to separate them. And I talk to a lot of people who separate the mind and the body. And so it's almost like sometimes being able to turn off one thing or the other, even overriding body cues. For example, just coming to mind, someone that I've worked with recently who would get really busy in the day. And so she just didn't eat. And then all of a sudden she comes home at the evening and she's starving and she's got to have a piece of cake while she's cooking dinner because she's too hungry. But now, that obviously is causing a whole other set of issues. But we really had to work on prioritizing, how do you take care of yourself in the day? You need to take time in your day to sit and eat, make sure that you're hydrating, maybe even have a little break. Um, and that shift is really hard for a lot of people. And we do. And I can catch myself doing this too, going, oh, but I've got to get this and this and this done. And we just get in that go, go, go mode. And it can feel really exhilarating. It can feel really good. But we have to learn how to, again, connect the mind and the body and remember to care for ourselves.
Hmm. So you mentioned this feel good that can come from being busy, being busyness, this busyness, especially when you enjoy what you do and you get
Yes.
busy with. Um, and I would say that that's your cortisol, right? You're getting some cortisol from that healthy, hopefully healthy amount of stress. You're getting that cortisol. So, and there are studies that say that we are addicted to that, right? To that cortisol release and the extra stress hormone that we get little
That
doses
little
of
extra
it.
oomph. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and then you work a lot with the nervous system, right? Nervous
Hmm.
system regulation. So, what would you say that you would? What does your work look like when you notice that? Okay, we need to regulate our nervous system because a lot of us can be unaware that we are in a constant fight or flight, and what are the consequences of a nervous system that rarely shuts down, not shuts down, but gets into rest and digest mode where the body can rest, regenerate, and heal.
So, this is something that I've experienced firsthand. Like I mentioned earlier, when I was teaching loads of yoga and driving all over the place every day, this studio, that studio, watching the clock constantly, teaching from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m., just all over the clock there. Um, really stretched too thin. And my body didn't have time to rest. And then I've learned some new habits to deal with that. But I see this in other people too, where not necessarily yoga teachers, but you're just busy. Life, there's so much going on. And especially where we live, I feel like I meet so many people with great ideas, and we love what we do and we want to be engaged with life. And that's all positive. But when we don't take the time to slow down, digestion is one thing that does suffer because you need to be in a more relaxed, calm state in order to properly digest your food. When we're not properly digesting food, we're not getting all the nutrients from it. Now, we need those nutrients to feed our body so that our body can perform all of its functions. In the short term, if you aren't digesting well for a couple of weeks, no big deal. You'll recover from that, especially if you're younger, you still have some good reserves, you'll be fine. But as we age, digestion also gets harder. As we age, we tend to have more nutrient deficiencies anyway, just for other reasons. There's a lot of conversation now around how depleted our soil is and things like that. So the food that we eat is not quite as nutrient dense as it used to be. And there can be a lot of other reasons too. Stress itself depletes nutrients from the body. So now you've got this escalating situation where you're stressed out all the time, you're running on empty, you're not getting enough nutrients, but stress is also depleting those nutrients, and you start to run yourself down after a while. And then you just find that for women in particular, that can be things like having thyroid or adrenal imbalances, having hormone imbalances in general. Yeah, when you get to that point where you're just really depleted. And so now you can run into things like thyroid and adrenal dysfunctions, hormone imbalance in general, and you just don't feel that great. It's sort of that persistent feeling of ick,
Mm,
low energy.
right, right. Yeah. So many great, important points there. Our nutrient deficiency, soil, and then our own lifestyle that can be depleting. And about the hormones, I personally like to link our glands with our chakras.
Uh-huh.
And I'm curious, since you pointed that out, if you happen to use that as a skill diagnose or to come to a deeper understanding of what's actually happening. So, for example, our thyroid gland, if we go deeper into the emotional aspect, let's say, our throat chakra and our communication, if you are able to be listened to or speak and communicate what our truth or what we need to say.
Mm-hmm.
And I think thyroid issues are very common amongst women because it can be so subtle, but also so deep. For example, if we never really feel listened to or didn't feel listened to in the past, and also that can stay in areas of our mind that we're not yet aware,
Mm-hmm.
our unconscious, or subconscious. So do you find that as a link, as a common link with imbalances? Because it seems like there are layers, right? There are
Mm-hmm.
the lifestyle, the surface, the physical manifestation, and then the deeper root of the issue. How does that show up in your work, if it does at all?
I don't do any diagnosing. So
Mm,
usually when someone comes to me, I am taking a full history and asking a lot of questions. And then my brain does start connecting pieces. I have I've studied a lot of different areas. And so I'm always kind of pulling from different modalities to think about what would best fit the person in front of me. Um, and kind of keeping questions in the back of my head like, yeah, is this a person who doesn't feel heard or doesn't self express? So I'm always kind of thinking about it, but I'm not that direct in presenting it to them. So I wouldn't necessarily sit them down and do a chakra meditation,
mm,
but I would definitely ask some questions around that topic. And a lot of what I'm doing is first and foremost, we are addressing the physical because we have the tangible, and that's where we really see results first. So I'm looking at nutrient wise what might be missing. And then a lot of times we do kind of bump up against something where, okay, this isn't really budging. Um, and we need to look, take that next step. We need to peel back to another layer and look at things more from a more energetic perspective. And so I like being able to draw from all these different backgrounds because everybody really is different. And I don't think there's any one way to heal. The more I learn, the more I experience personally, there's not one way.
it comes down to self investigation
I
with the
love that.
support of a practitioner, of a holistic nutritionist that can assist that, but that each individual will be unique. So not one body is the same, right? So
Mm-hmm.
every body is unique, and every human being is such a unique universe. I'm curious if there are any like funny situations you have experienced in yoga classes, because there are always some internal jokes, about. And if I'm curious if you have some stories.
uh, I won't call them horror stories, but all the, all those standout moments were things that weren't funny. They were like scary moments where I went, "Oh, I don't know how to handle this." Uh, but then, as I thought more about it, it's really just those silly little moments. I think because I take my work so seriously, I take teaching very seriously. And I'm always really intentional about the words I use. And I'm trying to make sure that I'm speaking in a way that people will understand and are they following along with me. And every now and then, just something bizarre comes out of my mouth. And I remember one day, I don't remember the pose I was teaching, but I remember telling students to stack their knees over their shoulders. And as soon as the words came out of my mouth, I'm on to the next cue. I'm ready to go to the next thing. And then I'm looking around the room and I'm watching their gears turn. And then they are looking at each other. And I mentally replay what I just said. And then we all just bust out laughing because that's not possible. Whatever it was I told them to do, physically impossible. So I think it's just moments like that of being reminded that it's not so serious and just to find the silly moments here and there.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, I see what you mean. When you, especially when this is the thing you do, I think when you make it as your career, of course, what led you there, it's already this deep connection, this deep feeling that this is it, that you're meant to do that. And there's something you notice, you feel from a yoga teacher that is like, this is your world. And you can definitely feel that in your classes, that yeah, you embody that. And okay, this is it, you know. And there's so much love and care and experience and dedication that comes also from staying in it. And by staying in it, you gather all this experience and that you bring to every class, right? So I'm sure when you started, it was definitely in a different world.
It was.
I think yoga has changed a lot, um, in a positive way, and with everything comes with both opposites,
Hmm.
right?
Certainly.
Um, so, what would you say to teachers starting out now that you learned along your path?
Oh, so much learning.
What would you say to you, to yourself back then?
Um, I think I would tell myself just to explore the things that interest me about yoga. I think that's why I've been able to stick with it for so long. Uh, Before I was a yoga teacher, I had a lot of random jobs. I had a degree in fashion merchandising. I worked for a footwear company for a while. Then I worked for a nonprofit, like complete flip flop. I just tried a lot of different things. And when I came to yoga, yoga is so multifaceted. And there was never a chance to get bored with it because, okay, I'm tired of learning about alignment. Let's go learn about chakras. Okay, I'm tired of that. Let's learn, about Ayurveda. There was just always something new to dig into. And I think it's really important in this yoga landscape now to have a niche and to have something that where you can really get more specific and you can find the person who really needs what you have to offer. And I think that's also more rewarding as a teacher. I feel really great when I'm working with a student who really needs what I have to offer versus, yeah, the person who just shows up because I'm on the schedule that day and they're free at 4 p.m. So they came to my class. But it's a different bond when someone's really receiving what you have to offer. And I think that it's just easier to do that when you're in flow with the things that light you up, the things that you find engaging that you want to talk about.
That's a great point. And we hear about niching and being specific and finding your what you want to focus on. And I found that sometimes we can try to manufacture that when it's possibly perhaps too early.
Mm-hmm.
How long did it take you to figure that out? And do you think it is a process, or do you think it's possible to have that out of the gate?
And if you have it out of the gate, I envy you because
Mm.
I feel like I'm still dialing it in. I think it's probably always going to shift a little bit, or maybe for a while. But I didn't really know for a long time until I started actually when I did my yoga therapy training and I realized, I was just at a point where my body was aching and it wasn't feeling great with the yoga practice that I had grown up in. And so yoga therapy gave me a different lens through which to see yoga. And then I started to see, oh, well, there's all these people even older than me in yoga. They can't be feeling that great doing all this other stuff either. And so then I started exploring that route more. I started taking on some private clients. And now I still have that. I still work with a lot of older adults right now, which I really enjoy. But I also am finding that those same ideas I'm applying to the person who comes to me with chronic health issues or burnout, and just being able to adapt yoga to each individual to me is really interesting. And I always laugh because people will come to me, and whether it's a group class or it's private, they show up and say, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Today I've got this hip thing going on, and I'm sorry it's going to be a problem for you." And I'm like, "No, no, I love that. Let's figure it out." So that happens to be something that is interesting to me. And yeah, I think that's part of finding your niche and getting deeper into what it is that you have to offer people.
Mm, great, great point. And now that yoga is often in the same realm as fitness,
Mm-hmm.
and of course, there is a fitness aspect to it, but there is yoga therapy, which is a whole world of healing through yoga, which is amazing. It's incredible, the potential of yoga when it's intentional and targeted for that purpose. And but it is therapeutic in itself. Even if you do it for fitness
Yeah.
purposes, it's so magical that you are going to you are going to
You
get
win.
yes, you get the therapeutic aspect as well. And since it is part of the fitness world, and who are getting to know yoga now or who are becoming interested in yoga now often are not aware of all these aspects and the possibilities that yoga offers, and which is the meditative aspect, the nervous system regulation aspect, which requires more a slow and mindful style of yoga. So I know that you bring that into what you offer, the importance of nervous system regulation, of finding balance in between the fast and active and strengthening practices that are definitely there's definitely a place for that and a benefit for that. But I'm curious, what are your thoughts about this fitness world and our tendency to, again, maintain that pace of our lifestyle, that sometimes there's a momentum that we find hard to slow down. So I hear a lot from students, it's like, I can't do the slow kind of yoga. I can't slow down because when I do it, my mind goes crazy and I just can't. I have to respond to that momentum, the momentum of the mind. And we definitely experience when you are in a fast pace, it's like when you slow down, it feels like you're trying to stop a train. Right. So I'm curious about your thoughts when it comes to that. And how do you navigate bringing that aspect in a moment where a lot of people are looking for the fast paced fitness aspect of yoga?
Stopping a train is a great way to put it. That's what it feels like. And I will say I teach a 4 or 4:30 p.m. class on a Thursday, and man, they've got some momentum going. And my way of approaching that is, well, I often need to remind myself that I was that student. I remember my first yoga class being slower paced, more hatha style, and it just didn't resonate with me. And then I found power vinyasa, and I'm like, this is incredible. I feel amazing. It's like a dance. And so that's what brought me in. And I need to remind myself that, oh, yeah, that's other people will have their journey with it too. They'll come into it. They'll love moving and the sweatiness and the heat, whatever it is that brings them to it. And then hopefully they keep exploring and learning more. And I know as a teacher, it can be really frustrating to be down the line and going, oh, but there's so much more. Please open your mind or open your heart to these other ways of doing things. But I think one way that I use to combat that feeling when students are on the mat and they're just getting into their practice, maybe they're coming from a stressful day and traffic and whatnot to get there. It's really helping them connect mind to body. So yeah, we always do a breathing practice, which is helpful for that. But giving them some cues to help them notice how their body is feeling, um, just helping them tune in, bringing awareness to different areas of the body. Are you feeling this here? Can you get a sense of this there? I think that's really helpful, and just reminding them to come back down here and stop living just in the head. Um, and the other thing I do is just trusting that within those 60 minutes, at some point there will be a shift. If I can just hold my seat as a teacher, if I can hold a pace, if I can keep myself clear and focused and on task and not get flustered because somebody else is flustered, which some days, you know, it's a hard thing to do. If you have a classroom full of students who are really distracted, it's easy to also become distracted yourself. But being able to just stay calm, stay at your pace, hold that for the class, and trust that by the time they get to Shavasana, they're not going to want to get up. And 9 times out of 10, we get there. And I trust that when they have that experience time and time again, that they'll start to see, oh, it's okay. I can slow down. I can let go a little bit.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, so being understanding that it's a process, right? It's a process for everybody.
Yeah.
Of self discovery and finding what works. You know, so yeah, thank you for offering yoga, for holding space in such a beautiful way. And I think you have found your way into your own balance and can now help so many people with what you have. So thank you
Thank you
for that. Is there anything you would like to share before we wrap up? What's the easiest way people can find you, and what are you offering at the moment?
Absolutely. You can find me at Jenna Miller Wellness on social media, and my website is jennamillerwellness.com. I am currently offering virtual services, so I'm doing virtual one-on-one yoga. I'm working also with virtual nutrition clients. So I have some different package options for that, depending on if you need just a little bit of support or if you want some more ongoing accountability and education. And then I've been combining the two and really, taking a look at how do we put this all together? Because as we've spoken about, yoga helps us understand the body a little bit more. So I'm always pulling the things together, but that's what I'm offering right now: some yoga, some nutrition, as well as workshops if you're in the San Diego area.
Wonderful, wonderful. Are you offering any public classes anywhere at the moment?
I will tell you, my favorite right now is I've been teaching at the San Diego Botanic Garden in Encinitas for several years. It's hands down the most phenomenal place you can ever practice yoga. On Saturday mornings at 9 a.m., we're outside on the lawn or in some location outdoors, under the trees, under the sun. It's beautiful. And on Wednesday evenings, now we're back inside the conservatory, the big greenhouse, with all the beautiful plants and orchids and all kinds of cool stuff that I'm always discovering something new when I'm there. And that's a really special spot.
I've taken that class at Botanical Gardens. It's also my favorite. You get the beautiful medicine of yoga from you, and plus nature, and you get to watch the hummingbirds and hang out in the garden. It's beautiful.
There's always some kind of cool visitor, like a rabbit or a hummingbird, hawks. Yeah, there's always something fun out there.
So the best of nature and yoga.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the time to speak with me and let me share some stories.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.